Good morning.
There he is. Hello, Ross.
Hey everyone.
Yeah.
Trying to keep awake here.
Since you're here, I'm going to give a quick update that there have a few PRs on the Wax developer docs have been merged. Thanks to everyone who contributes content, and also thanks to Include Null, who took some time and reworked a lot of the pages and also brought the framework up to date. So thanks a lot to anyone involved. All outstanding PRs have been merged, and we're looking forward and awaiting the next PRs. Yeah, there were a bunch of notifications because I processed it all in a batch.
Could you quickly go through what was changed or merged?
Yeah, of course. I reviewed all the files. I wanted to be on the safe side. However, the contributions were from trustworthy persons like Ross, Marcos, and
yeah. But I mean, go through them now so we know what happened. Like just a quick walkthrough.
Okay, I can do that. Since the repository is up to date, going to do that right now. Let me share my screen for a second. Sharing my wrong window. This one, it is. So there's one outstanding, which is not done yet, which adds the Portuguese translations to the site. However, we were not so satisfied with the translations. On the code page, I cleaned up the branches. We now have a dev branch also, which is up to date. You can continue working on that. Looking into the commits, I'm going to walk through a few of the changes that happened. So the order is not important, but at some point we received a larger update from Marcos, who took Oleg's game tutorials and translated them into Spanish. Those articles have been added a long while ago, and with the recent batch, he also did a formatting or cleanup of existing content pages, often just formatting improved. Going back into the commit history, so this was a bunch of content that was added lately. Game articles developed by Oleg. Trying to go back here. And then we had a huge update from Include in December from Include Null, updating the framework and the dependencies, as well as adjusting some of the content or refactoring the site so that the English content sits in its own directory. This is more kind of a technical change that happened here. And then we had Ross updating all of his articles on Hyperion to reflect a current date and also an updated version of Wax to Wax version 5, as well as anything else essentially that changed in the installation or maintenance process of Hyperion, versions of software components, Hyperion updated. Thanks a lot for that. You can find them all on the left side under Operate and Hyperion Guides, I think is the category.
I wanted to do it for 3.5, but it wasn't ready, right? So I took notes of how I manipulated everything. So when 3.5 goes final, I should be able to relatively quickly update everything that I need to get it current. But this is the current master release.
Nice. Thanks a lot for that. We are up to date with this. It is only a year, but Node.js bumped by 4 version numbers. But I think they're doing it in steps of 2. A lot of dependencies updated. I saw the requirements changed. A lot more disk now needed.
I think it all forced me to have to go to Ubuntu 20. Finally had to get rid of 18 for the record to support that Node.js.
Then we had another great addition, which was Caracol. So that one was in between. Caracol built a tool which, it's essentially a GitHub repository with which contains a tool which allows you to airdrop token and NFTs to multiple holders. And they wrote an article about how it works and how you can set it up on your own. This was added to the developer docs too, as well as a few links of products that no longer exist have been removed, and their tool was added too. This one was a smaller one, but then we have another one from Marcos. This was a fairly huge one, which updated a lot of the content pages a second time. What I typically do when I receive such a pull request, I review all the files. So I make sure that the dependencies are correct. However, there was a PR last week. I will show it here. This one we rejected, and Include Null recommended to do so too. But it was interesting nevertheless. There's a site, Let Me Explain, which is essentially an LLM chatbot widget added to your website, which is trained on the content of that website. So that would have included a widget from a third party onto the website, typically done via JavaScript, but that's a no-go, because at any time the JavaScript which is loaded on the website can be changed to some malicious code, so this would never get accepted. The idea is cool though. You have a chatbot widget on the website, and what I found pretty inspiring about that was that they even staged the PR on their site so that it's easily added to the website. So you don't need to be a techie to use that widget. Yeah, that's essentially it. The Wax developer documentation repository is up to date. Awaiting more contributions. All right. What else should we talk about today? Anything you're experiencing on the TechOps, DevOps side currently? How's the network health doing at the moment?
I can kick off. I have been doing some experimentation, and I wrote an article on it last week on the Antelope firewall. And I don't know if anybody's actually heard of it yet. It was built by the Boyd guys, Animus Labs. And I actually went and spun it up and started playing around with it. And it's pretty damn cool, man. You put it in between your SSL termination point. It doesn't do SSL termination, but it does load balancing. But it also has policies a little bit more aligned with Node.js. So you can actually implement policies on contract, on what specific function that they're trying to do, on the account that's trying to do it. And it's spun up pretty simply in Docker. Hold your breath, Michael. But they've also got a apt deb file that you can install. But it's all there. And have a look at my article. It's an easy read. I mean, I only kind of played around and I just changed some settings and I checked that they were in fact working. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that it's actually got a lot of functionality. The more you kind of play with it, and I'm not quite sure how much we would use it at face value, but I know everybody's always talking about restricting spam rather than having your normal restricting abusive requests. Rather than having your normal sort of sliding window rate limits that you set. Now you could probably get a little bit more tricky with what you're actually trying to restrict. So let me just put the link. It's in Medium. Have a go. It's definitely a lot of fun, and I think it'll tick some customizing boxes.
Did you look into the resource requirement to run it, the overhead and everything?
So I ran it, and I actually put a whole lot of requests, and I just couldn't register any like real resources. I mean, I suppose once you put it on production and get 1 million requests over an hour, it might be a little bit more, but it just didn't seem heavy. You know what I mean? It didn't seem heavy. But like I didn't put it into production. But have a go. Maybe do it on testnet. Maybe have some kind of spam thrown at it and see how it goes. But it just seems to be pretty light from what I can see. Let me just put the link in. I'll put it in the chat there. That's my Medium link, but I'll put a tweet out and real world A/B tests just route half the traffic through it. Yeah,
man, go all in or don't, man. Don't have a round robin between different stacks. That sucks.
Yeah. It just didn't seem heavy. And look, it's I haven't tested everything that it can do. I just say check it out. Cool.
Thank you. Did you share? Yeah. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, I'll put a tweet out and I'll also put it in all of our channels.
On which network did you test it?
On Wax mainnet, but I didn't put it in like taking all of our user requests. It was just me testing. So like I was putting like 10 requests a second, didn't even touch sides. But who knows what 2 million requests an hour would look like.
Quick question. It says like you wrote relies on block time to ensure system time is correct for reference. So what happens if the block time is different than the 500 ms? Is that? No.
It looks at when it knows that you're progressing in blocks. It's not so much block. It's not like half a second block times.
Right.
By default, if you fall behind 5 seconds of your system time, then it takes that node as down. So that's how it figures out if Node.js is running or not. It's quite tricky. Like seriously, you look at it and then you use it and you'll be like, hey, that's cool. Hey, wow, it can do that. Oh, that's very cool. It's got lots of the little things like that. And I'm sure they'll add something if it starts to get really used. It's feature complete at the moment, and the final release is like version 1.01. Yeah, I'm sure once it gets, I haven't seen it out in the wild. I knew they were building it a year ago. It was completed 10 months ago. And they were happy for me to spin it up and run it. I actually don't know anyone else that's using it, but yes, it definitely exists and it works. It appears to work quite well for Wax.
Oh yeah, the last commit is happened 10 months ago.
Yeah, it works.
All right, thanks for that update. Going to get into another topic which we discussed recently inside the OIG, and we want to improve another part of the guidelines, and I want to ask you guys for some feedback. I'm going to view it here on my screen. This is essentially a good thing, but it's also a problem. We have a lot of backup providers on Wax. This here is the list of backups for different kinds of services that you will find on Wax. The issue is surely there's a lot of need for proper backups, but we also find in some cases backups are unmaintained or out of date for a prolonged time. So those backups are essentially worthless, because if you would start, for example, from a very old blocks log, you would need a lot of time to sync up to the latest block. So they would need to be to not be out of date, which is 95% of the backups, but we have a lot of redundancy in the backups. Any ideas on how we can improve the quality of the backups and not have too many backups in the network? How can we effectively solve that situation?
The amount of backups is a result from the OIG guidelines, I guess.
Yeah, it is, because you get points to provide backups, which is right? We provide a service, a backup. We deem it worthwhile for a certain amount of points, so people are providing backups. If we take away all the points from backups, probably not many will continue to provide backups, right? So we have talked about two different options. I like option 2 the most. Option 1 was when you run it in an API, you need to provide backups for it too, which probably will cause more redundancy. I didn't like that idea at all, but it would make sure that providers of certain services like Atomic Assets API or Hyperion would be able to run that service, so they could back up that service and provide those backups. Option 2, which I like more, is we start to cap the points, the maximum points you can receive for backups at 1 point or something, which would mean you can only have a ChainDB snapshot and Atomic Assets backup plus, let's say, state history or something.
What's the thought process of these limitations? Is the only goal to reduce how many you have?
Yeah. It's, yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of dialogue lately has been to try to impact how guilds operate based on a result you see from guidelines over time, and doing that will, like, let's say now that you limit the backup capacity, or you force everyone to run one for their API, you impact teams that has put effort and time into doing this, like Ross has for his Hyperion Elasticsearch snapshot. It's not just, if you want a backup of Elasticsearch, it's not just to provide it for everyone. You need to have a dedicated set of clusters for that. And if you just start to remove points from folks that have capacity to do a lot of backups, because you don't want other teams to do backup, I don't understand what the goal is here. It seems the goal for guidelines should be to have what the WAX blockchain needs, what type of things the network is benefited from. And I think there's a lot of attempts for micromanaging lately instead of finding paths forward with the rules and the guidelines that actually benefit the network long term. It's a lot of it's more micromanaging lately, and I have no idea why.
Okay, so
Kefa is raising his hand.
yes, please. So the problem we have is when we started to grant points for backups, we had 3 backup providers, and we want to honor the efforts these backup providers put into the whole thing. So we introduced points for it. To make it fair, we had to standardize these points, and this resulted in then almost everybody providing these backups. Now, this creates more pressure on everybody else because now more people are providing backups, more people feel required to provide backups. This in return increases the cost on everybody. And now we have an abundance of backups, more than we need, and are essentially spending as a network these funds on these backups. So this does not, this does not impact people inside the top 21 so much, but for standbys, it means we are essentially burning extra funds through the scaling pay, because now everybody inside the inside the standby roster that is providing these backups, remind you, these are up to 24 points, is collecting up to 2K more pay that is then missing from other fund, missing for other sources that would otherwise remain in savings and cover the parachute long term, for example.
All right. So you want to reduce the number of standbys?
Yeah, maybe. So,
Or at least try to not allocate those funds on redundant parts of the ecosystem, right?
exactly. So it's just something where we have the redundancy and we don't need the redundancy. We don't need to have 20 backups. And we don't need to burn extra funds on these 20 backups. And that's just the point here and the problem. That's why we want to, why we're considering to cap these points, because this will not really impact the people that have been providing these backups, because they have already providing these backups before there were points for it. So these people
but
would still...
it will impact it.
Yeah, of course. It will impact because they will lose the points, but they were already providing these backups when they
So
got
they
the
have
points.
to put the effort in something else, right?
No, what I mean is, before they were getting points, they were already providing these backups. And so
Yeah, but
these people that now
this
provide the backups...
Situation has
will-
changed, right?
Sorry, what?
The situation has changed from what happened before to what is now. It's not the same ecosystem. It's not the same environment.
Yeah, exactly. The situation has changed, and we want guilds to adapt. And there is just no need for these 20 backups, and we would like for guilds to focus on something that's actually needed and not providing redundant backups nobody needs.
Is this the best approach to reach that result?
I don't know. That's why we're discussing it here.
Exactly. And then there's option C, Anders, which is unspoken and which we didn't talk about before, but we tend to not do it this way. We could, of course, to be the most effective, assign this task to 3, 4, 5 operators to provide those backups, to focus energy and time on this task solely to provide a good backup infrastructure, for example. But that's not how we operate here. So that's the reason you will often find general rules which count for every guild. Carl?
There's another thing that's happening here as well. And that is that, well, this current, like today, the particular issue might be that, well, there's too many points given for backups. And so in a way, it becomes point inflation, right? There was a point in time where it was a very necessary service, and now everyone's doing it. So it's pretty much like it's no longer, all these points, but their inherent value is that it helps differentiate the efforts of the different guilds. If everyone's providing it, right, then it doesn't help differentiate anymore. So maybe today we could solve the whole backup point inflation issue, but then there's going to be point inflation issues tomorrow from other areas, right? So this might be more so a shortcoming of the formula used for standby pay, in that it is not designed with point inflation being a thing that will consistently happen. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to have point inflation, because again, at the point in time, this was a very useful and important thing that there weren't a lot of people providing, a lot of guilds providing, right? So maybe the standby pay algorithm needs to be adjusted, and that would also, because if this effort has already been put in, everyone's already provided these. I see no reason for people to just be told that we'll just stop doing that, you know. And it's like, as far as like decentralization goes, I think it's actually quite nice that everyone has their own backups. Right? I think there is actually something to be said about that.
So,
Any thoughts on that? So
I think it has to do with the system as well. Not sure if it's the point inflation or whatever it is.
what do you mean with the system?
So one other thing that plays into this is exactly this point inflation, and we introduced a lot more points that can essentially be farmed while not at the same time increasing the minimum score. This is probably also something we have to factor in. So when the market went down, we reduced the minimum score, and then we started to increase scores on all ends. So about a year or two ago, it was not possible to even get a paid standby position just with infrastructure. And right now, as things are, you can not only get a standby position just with infrastructure plus backups, but you're actually a very high standby. So the minimum score is 125. And now with all infrastructure and backups, you can sit at 160 points. So there has been a huge inflation when it comes to points. And at the same time, we have not increased the minimum score.
Because the way I see this situation is that point was added to encourage teams to provide more backups. There are teams that are strong in infrastructure. If points are removed from infrastructure to discourage people to focus on it, the teams that are focused on infrastructure are most hurted, and they are encouraged to do things that they are not as strong in, which I personally don't think is a good thing. I think that the network benefits from having teams that are strong in different areas that can help each other and assist in different things. And if the rating creates situations where you have to do these kind of things, the rating is the problem, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure that just removing points from something will have the kind of impact that you want without any negative side effects from it.
So in the past, we call this monthly requirements or monthly points. When we added points for something that essentially covered the effort of setting it up, and then we took it away again after some time. So this has always been done. But the question is, how do you manage this? How do we have a fair points for the guilds that should provide something, while at the same time discourage other guilds to oversupply it? And this is a balancing issue that has been growing over the last couple months, if not years.
Yes,
And
because
it's
the
a-
system encourages quantity of services and not quality. And how do you measure quality? And that's the difficult.
Exactly, and that's the problem. And I think also the needs of the ecosystem changed. That's why we have more and more APIs that we have to judge and score, because we need them as the ecosystem.
Yeah. Does anyone want to add to that discussion?
Maybe there should be another category of guilds, the top 10, a little bit higher pay, and it comes with the expectations of having a lot more mastery over the infra stuff and providing all of these things that would otherwise be just the little bonus points, what they would, it would just be like only they could, because it's like we don't need like a guild that's in like 30th or 40th position to be providing like a backup, like who's using it, there's so many it's not even on the list. Like
I'm not sure that it's that simple either, because then we will create a situation where, okay, so we have X amount to do that. What about other things that are also valuable for the ecosystem, like explorers or those things? Then we need to start to make a list and we start to divide them. Maybe that's what you should do. That's what CC32 has wanted all along. I am not sure it's the best approach. I think that the system should it should see differences in teams, encourage it, and value them based on what they are providing. And of course, they should help to push them forward and not just let people be and do nothing. They should still grow and do keep working on their products and improve the ecosystem, and the ecosystem will change and things will have to adapt. But I'm not sure that this is not my feedback right now. Is not only from this, it's from the discussions over the last few months. There's been a lot more focus on micromanaging through the points and what will happen compared to what has been in the past. And I'm not sure that direction is possible. I'm not sure it's positive.
The problem we have is that there is a lot of stagnancy among the guilds. So there's quite a few guilds that do little and just sit on the ecosystem points now because there's too many ecosystem points. And that's also what factors into the backup discussion, where we have to weigh in. Do we say, the other point was we could reduce the points. So we just don't grant as many points anymore for the backups, so that in total you can only get 1 point, but then we still don't change that guilds can reduce their spending on these backups. So
a part of Anders' feedback, which we also talked about during the last month, and there's even a written proposal inside the RFP system repository which you can find, but that's a suggestion which matches your feedback probably the most, Anders. A complete separation of tech and product with I don't know, however the funding allocation would look like, with essentially you choose the type of your guild, technical or development or marketing or whatever it is, right? 2 tracks. And on the one side, you receive only the tech points. On the other side, you receive only the contribution points. And then, of course, you have some similarities between those both. You need to have a producer running on mainnet and on testnet and stuff.
Problem with that is that it does not solve the underlying issue of tech guilds over providing infrastructure that's not of quality. And we don't have the means to properly evaluate the quality of provided infrastructure and endpoints.
Yeah, that would be, but that would be the case if you split it like 50-50, and you have 30 guilds and 15 guilds are providing tech ops only.
I have a different potential solution, or I'm not sure. It's a path, not more than a solution. What you are suggesting right now is removing points from people doing something so they stop doing it. What about encouraging them to do something else instead? By encouraging other things, research development, I don't know how that could be done. Doing something that moves the ecosystem forward, encouraging that for them so they can spend money and time there, and they can by themselves start to reduce other areas if they want to.
But
that happens.
Yeah, that's how it's always supposed to be and how it works. You can't just do whatever you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, but
and-
I'm talking about
the
encouraging this.
ecosystem
Right
will
now,
be
you are
fine.
discouraging
Yeah,
people.
but-
You are saying, don't do this. What about
Yeah, the
focusing on,
problem
okay,
is that-
we need more of this. This is what we currently think
Yes.
is of value. We need more of this.
Yeah, the problem is we can't solve every issue and tell everyone what we need, because if we would know that, we could do it and we can encourage it. But we can say what we don't need. And that's something we should do if we don't need it. But if we don't know what we need, we can't tell the people what we need. And that's why we can't encourage them. Sure, we need more documentation and we tell people, hey, add to the developer docs, add to educational content, and they will do it. Maybe, or at least some will do it. But that has always been the case.
But then those points will also get farmed at some point. If you, whatever initiative you put points behind, some guilds will just look through the list of contributions and do something similar and demand the same points. That happens too.
And that happens
So-
regularly. So if somebody comes up with something that is providing a value, it doesn't take long and another guild just copies it.
I want to take the moment to highlight that if you look at the current guild roster, and especially the top 21, there has been a lot of change in position in the past months or even years, I would say. WaxDAO from standby to one of the top guilds on Wax by focusing a lot on contributions and even letting his Hyperion SLR slip and not being in a rush to fix it because he's providing a lot of product services on Wax, receiving a lot of points of it because we honor the development of products, of course. But yeah, it needs.
I think there's like another aspect of all this, and that's that with all of these little extra peripheral services are continued to, be obviously there aren't that many of them right now, but it could see it as being as a, an extra expense that like all the guilds are practically incentivized to do, especially if they're in like the standby area. And so that's like again making me think that there's some adjustments that need to be made with the standby equation. I think just something has to be modified a little bit there.
What about what Include Nold said in the tech chat? That he thinks that maybe additional services should be moved to labs contracts instead? How would that work?
It's not a bad idea at all to actively take out the backups completely and make them a high quality service.
Discussed in the last few weeks internally. There have been some discussion to remove everything that is not infrastructure to Wax Labs.
Out of curiosity, though,
Personally, I'm a fan of that.
would that set the precedent that
But there is no
can't
consensus
get
on
points?
how to do it right now.
Like, well, like, would that set the precedent that you can't get points for anything through labs then? Because I do believe that right now you can. Right now you can get like a labs grant or a labs contract.
No, what I'm
and you
saying
can still get
is
points.
remove from the block producing rewards everything that is not basic block production and basic infrastructure. That means also moving funds from the rewards to the Wax Labs, and everyone with a project go and apply for funding on the Wax Labs. But that's, let's say, an extreme of the idea. So maybe there is a middle ground. It's something that we have discussed a few times. It's not something that is going to happen right now, but I think that it's worth a discussion.
Any other thoughts? Our initial talking point was backups. Should we limit or cap the points at 1 point maximum, which means we will still have backups, but people will provide less backups to receive points.
That was the initial point, but it's like it's part of a bigger problem, which is, you know, you have point inflation and you have, I mean, the whole OIG platform is a tool that's used to incentivize certain behaviors at the guilds, right? They get the most value for the ecosystem. And so the consequence of that is that you get a lot of redundancies, you get a lot of extra expenses for various guilds. And so, I mean, it won't be the last, you know, little thing that's going to pop up where there's a lot of guilds providing it because it's incentivized to do so, even though it might not actually be that impactful, and it makes the evaluation process more difficult when it comes to differentiating between the guilds. So,
Joseph?
Yeah. We have to accept that whatever we do, the system will have flaws. It's impossible to build a governance system that is perfect. So let's accept that. What we're doing here is iterate, and I think these calls are useful, you know, to understand your concerns, to test new things, to discuss. But I'm convinced that whatever we do, there always will be people that will think that it's a very bad idea and the system doesn't work. What is the option? Go to pure DPoS, right? We have seen how this works in other chains. So
I think it's fine. I don't think it's,
I mean, yeah.
I don't think it's like fundamentally
I'm
bad.
saying this because I understand, you know, that the changes the people don't like changes, and if you guys have a better idea on how to do it, please just let us know, right? Because maybe we are running out of ideas. But we are doing a lot of internal discussions. I mean, hours and hours to try to, you know, come up with a system that actually helps WAX get out of this hole, while also we keep in our mind that there are block producers with people working there, with families that they have to get an income. So it's something that we always keep in mind. It's not easy to get some of these suggestions, right, and implement things that we know that will have like a negative impact in some block producers. So if you have better ideas on how to solve these problems, please let us know.
I think these are all just details though, because like this pattern has emerged in other areas before. Like this exact same dilemma it already exists with the provision of like Hyperion and just like full history notes, right? Where it's like, okay, we didn't have a whole lot of these. There were points given, this behavior is encouraged. Now we have a whole lot of these. A lot of them are redundant. This becomes an extra expense for every single guild, while not adding as much value to the ecosystem anymore when this many people are providing it, right? So this is a systemic issue that's a consequence of the criteria. And it's okay. Like, of course, it's not about making the perfect system. You can't make the perfect system, but it's important to identify the actual variables and the patterns that are emerging here, right? And just try to factor that into the evaluation process, or just at least make the evaluation process or the way that points are given for new expected services and features, mindful that, well, perhaps what if every single, what happens if over 60% of the guilds are now receiving points for this? That should be part of the equation for how points are given out. Because if everyone's doing it, then it's no longer a valid criterion for differentiating the guilds. It just makes it more difficult, and it just becomes an extra expenditure on all the guilds.
Yeah, that's why I am exactly convinced of the fact that we that by treating everyone the same, which is a wonderful idea, we don't get the best out of those two entities. The one is we're talking about value providers, and the other one is we're talking about service providers. So just my opinion, where I do see a two-track system mitigate a lot of the issues, is by not treating everyone the same with the same guidelines, without being subjective, but just split it in two. You are either a tech ops guild and you get funding to be a service provider and to be a high quality service provider, or you are either a product and strong in the development game or marketing game, and you don't need to bother with the tech ops at all, which wouldn't destabilize the network. Again,
I think that's a completely different issue than what's at hand. The issue at hand is that there was, at a point in time, there was infra that was needed, and so there was incentivized with points, and now a significant portion of guilds are providing that infra. It has become a redundancy, it has become an extra expense, and now, well, how do we proceed forward? How do we proceed forward when a significant portion of guilds are providing a service that, well, it's no longer that, necessary, well, for everyone to like, it just seems like this step, right? Like, it's easy to add extra criteria on how do you approach removing it and trimming the fat, so that you can keep the point inflation, under control, and you can have all the guilds, not essentially be forced to, because it becomes like the meta of playing this game, which is the whole, the OIG machines, right?
Okay, then I'm giving you a practical example. For the backups, for example, I want Ross and Anders and Michael and every other very technical guild to be providing backups, for example, with unlimited points, because they know what they're doing. They're providing them with a lot of bandwidth, whatever it is, they can manage that. And I want still to be providing guidelines for guilds, which essentially are not subjective, which means I don't select those parties to just do that service, to provide that service, the backups. And then I think I'm focusing my time and energy much better if this task was assigned to the specialists in this part, in this guild roster, and not everyone. But I can't write rules that, allow.
That is a valid approach. That is a valid approach, but that brings the problem of, well, how many specialists should there be? How do we qualify the specialist? How do we make it so that it is not a system that's picking favorites, and it is picking, well, the guilds who are doing the best quality work, are able to compete for that in a way that is fair, that also opens it, like, leaves the door open for like the future, so that it's not just like, well, as a core part of this blockchain's protocol, these 5 guilds have this contract till the end of time, right? You don't want that to be a thing, although that might seem very appealing. It's not very healthy for the chain overall, right? Just as a theory, just as an idea, which is, of course.
What do you mean by healthy? Because I consider it unhealthy too, to be so ineffective, let's say, with allocation of time and budget.
I don't think it's necessarily unhealthy. I think it's to have like an overabundance and lots of redundancies in infra. I think, but it's like, it would be quite unhealthy if certain profitable portions of the ecosystem were completely monopolized effectively, and because there will come a point in time, maybe not like next year, maybe not 10 years from now, but eventually there's got to be like a handoff of these services, and there just needs to be a proper way to evaluate and let guilds compete, getting the best price, just making it competitive the same way that the top 21 is competitive. Well, then so should the contract race things. And I think that was actually like actively discussed in the chat right now. So
Yeah.
it's not easy though.
Yeah,
It is very difficult.
For what I'm reading in chat, I want to add the comment that this software, it has matured a lot in the past 3 or 4 years. And so did the guides and the documentation we have for those tools, and the people that are experienced enough to support you when you run into issues too. So I'd say the infrastructure business has become easier than 3 years ago, and I think you can anticipate that it will become even easier in 3 years than now.
Maybe easy on
as the
paper, but
software
there's a lot of it's a very wide thing, you know what I mean? Like there's a massive burden of knowledge. Maybe it's very easy today, but with all of like Ross's brilliant guides to like follow along and get it up and running. But it's like there's a lot that actually goes into this, and having mastery over it is like a totally different. That's like a completely different thing, I think the pooling system. I think I read something about pooling. Like I think pooling of points for those certain things might be. Yeah, Kiefer, you mentioned this. I still like the idea of pools. That seems to be like the game theory. Like that's like the solution for like a lot of other, when you have lots of people providing points, like even in crypto games, right? The pool was like one of the ways that they balanced like tokenomics, and it worked quite effectively when it came to distributing a fair amount of resources to everyone, right? So maybe a pooling system.
My opinion on this is clear. I think it will diminish the points for top infra providers, and still make it just accessible to become a guild by providing infrastructure. I mean, we can always play with, or we can always adjust the minimum score threshold for that, surely. But I think this will only hurt the high quality service providers compared to an approach where you assign the specialists to a certain task.
Well, how about this? What if the OIG and all of the infra specialists got together and came up with the new criteria? Because it's like there's only, like, I don't know, like if I'm even fit to talk about this. I don't know if many people are fit to share weigh in their opinion on this, right? If you guys actually know this stuff, which I do believe, like you guys actually know this stuff a lot better, right? Maybe the specialists should be helping putting together criterion, not only so that it benefits themselves, so that they can be evaluated better, but so that it can set the precedent for everyone to be evaluated a bit better.
I mean, you could also bring in those that use it, because that helps. I mean, I can tell you all sorts of hard work and things that I do that may not really matter, but the consumption of those services and the feedback on that, the non-standard format, naming, whatever, right? Intervals, those types of things. What's needed, what's not.
There's also the whole question of what do we provide and why. So why do we want to provide the infrastructure? What do we want guilds to provide the infrastructure to the ecosystem for free? What is the incentive here? What is the idea here? And that is also probably something we need to factor in and reevaluate it during the current markets.
Yeah.
The big obstacle that you mentioned to me earlier, Kiefer, was providing, like in this context, like backups as a whole, is that while a backup is being made or while a snapshot is being made, that endpoint is inaccessible. makes sense. And it's like, well, if the size of the data is really big, it might be inaccessible for quite some time, and so you have all of a sudden this whole SLR problem, right? It's just you just don't know.
That's why you have multiple of them. You don't use the same node for it.
That's the thing. So that should be, that inherently means that there's an extra operational cost to providing consistent, let's say every 12-hour backups, right? That should be, honestly, maybe that should be a criterion of if you want to provide backups, you must demonstrate that you have like redundancies in terms of your infra, you know?
It's very hard to validate.
I mean, it's even deeper. It's even deeper than that, though. I mean, like when the node freezes, you can't monitor them effectively anymore. I mean, my node just stops at a block for 20 minutes. You know what kind of alarms that sets off on anything that's monitoring a blockchain node? So that's why providing snapshots is hard, because you don't even know when it breaks, because you can't effectively, you have to build things around it to do it, right? It's not normal. Even to the point of, like you talk about a snapshot every 12 hours. You know how long it takes to catch up from 12 hours behind? We run them every hour. Now we purge them in 2 days worth of every hour. I think it's like a week worth of every 4 hours. And then we retain ultimately the first of the month, I think. You know what I mean? Go all the way back to 2021, 22. But I mean, there's different strategies and stuff for it. But a lot of that's underneath the scenes. And do you need a snapshot from 2022? Maybe not. Somebody does. You run a diffuse, you probably do. But there's a lot just on snapshots, right? Do you know what it takes to stop a state history node and grab a copy of a, what is it, 14, 15 terabyte file, copy it somewhere else, and then host it to let Kaz rip on my gigabit circuit for the next 2 weeks to download it?
It takes me 2 weeks to do the backup.
Right.
Because I create it, and then I push it from Australia to Canada as well.
I mean, I have the ability to do it all on my own server. And even that, as an infrastructure provider, I'm like, it ain't worth it for me for the points that I have to be provided for it and what it equals out to provide Kaz, 10 terabytes of data on the whim. Nah, go to Ross. Or I'll do like Nations, where when you hit Nations and you start ripping on it, man, it thumps back to like 10 megabit per second. It'll work, but you got a long time.
I'm speechless. I don't even know how you would how you address something like this.
Right.
Because again, it's like, so something like that isn't even immediately obvious,
Welcome to be the hamster in the wheel, yo.
Yeah, and by how this system is built up to encourage everyone to do the backups, and then Ross is doing this, that takes this long process of a lot of extra hardware, and then you just say, we don't value you anymore because we don't want other people to do this. That's not a good approach in my opinion.
There is another approach, I guess approach E, which is that it's just accepted that there's going to be, like as you incentivize all of these extra peripheral services, you got to kind of accept that there's going to be redundancies. You got to accept that people will do this because it becomes EV positive to provide it for the points. And that just becomes like a sunk cost for the ecosystem. That becomes a sunk cost for the chain. It's anticipated, right? The same way, like you look at, like, I don't know, any kind of, like, let's say, like government contract and the things that go into it, any defense military contracts. It's way more egregious. The kind of things that you see there. I think this is within like looking at it in the real world and how it actually like breaks down and what actually happens. I think this is just fine and well within the realm of reason as far as looking at it as a whole, instead of like looking at the individual pieces saying, oh well, that like that one thing is like, it's too much of a burden, it's too expensive. to give all these points for snapshots. I think looking at it as a whole, I mean, like, okay, this becomes an extra part of the package because there's only so many, at least right now, so many of these info points to give out. So I don't know.
I still believe we shouldn't force everyone into a TechOps heavy role by needing to provide all of that. I'm specifically looking for solutions to what I previously said. We need to find a way to manage taking out those points, but still incentivizing the specialists to provide that service. With being as objective as possible. Which I feel we can't with the current guidelines.
Yeah, but this kind of does also go back to what Anders was saying, where there's no need to micromanage for the sake of micromanaging. And maybe like, okay, we've had like an hour of discussions on this very particular subject. It's like, well, what about bigger things that could be done by the guilds that could actually push forward the ecosystem a bit more? Things that are a bit beyond the scope of just the hoops to jump through for OIG evaluations. Are there things that guilds should have on their radar that they could be doing, that the OIG could be incentivizing, that would push forward the ecosystem? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reiterating your points here, Anders.
I'm trying to process my thoughts at the moment.
I can name a positive example of Oleg. I don't know if he's here with us today, for example, but he was lately motivated a lot. So he proposed products and pitched them and had introduction calls, got some funding to work on those stuff. So that was a very positive example recently of someone having development power and wanting to build a product. And then you will also find a lot of contributions on the Caracol product sheet, for example, the contributions sheet, which we also shared somewhere in December or November on the Telegram channel for some feedback from you guys. So you will often find the guilds identifying the need for a solution for a problem and then build it, right? If we would need to collectively brainstorm and agree on what to build next, always open to that. We're doing that sometimes on Thursdays too, but essentially you guys can also bring suggestions for what we should be building next on the TechOps and DevOps side. My observation, though, is we are quite saturated on the TechOps and DevOps side at the moment. You won't have a hard time to find a working API for your service, public API at the moment. You will always need to make the compromise that you might get rate limited, which will push you towards spinning up your own infrastructure, but most of the public infrastructure is really good. You can use in your productive app, especially the RPC APIs. We are quite saturated on the TechOps side, on the DevOps side. So we're talking about contributions, and then you will often find tooling and monitoring software, for example, like Ross is building to monitor his own setup, releasing it to the public so that you guys can use it. So I'd say there are a lot of opportunities?
I mean, there are definitely opportunities, but it's also a lot more streamlined to follow like a list of criterion and just build things that you know are guaranteed to receive points, as opposed to taking the risk of developing a product. This is I hate to go back into the circle here, you know, but that is why like you're observing what you're observing, you know. And I don't actually think that there's anything you can do to change the criteria, change the system that would change that. I think that's actually just the path of least resistance, and just the nature of this whole thing of just blockchain development as a whole, you know. Or really any criterion, any rubric that's got a aspect of, well, you have very well defined prerequisites, and then you have, well, if this part is completely subjective, you're gonna have to book a meeting and we'll just see, you know. Which, like again, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with that, but it's just more so the nature of it.
So just because I'm curious, what do you think we need to build on Wax? The most urgent, if you would, just what you deem the most urgent, which we should work on. Is it UX for the user, wallets, block explorers, whatever it is? Is it fun and fun experiences and gaming? Is it more developer tooling, simplifying the creation of smart contracts? What do you think is needed the most?
What's needed, at least in my personal opinion, is an activity for people to do that's available 24/7, that has an aspect of gambling involved and a aspect of being multiplayer and being able to interact with other people. A game fits that bill most effectively, because like there's, you know, the nature of crypto as a whole is that, well, let's say you interact with it, you're buying into like a token or a project, there's an inherent medium-term to long-term gratification process here, right? You're investing in like an idea, you're investing in maybe just like a meme token, right? A little bit of futurism in there too, right? You're being a part of the future, and then you're hedging your bets on that. And so regardless of whatever, like let's say, like compared to like buying Wax tokens or buying Sol or buying any other or maybe like NFT projects, the medium to the long-term prospect will always exist. The issue is the short-term gratification. That's what a lot of projects are competing for, and that's, I think, the explicit focus on that hasn't been very well established, right? So an example of this is when you have a NFT drop that happens, the anticipation towards that drop, right? And then you're waiting for it to be revealed, you know? This becomes a short-term gratification process, and it's something that, well, you're gonna get lots of dopamine from it, lots of excitement. It becomes something that people can share. It has urgency. It brings the attention to the right now, you know? Now, of course, if you want, like, it's just not sustainable though, right? That's the big problem. There are lots of short-term gratification things, but they're not sustainable, not yet. You have, let's say, you got, what is it, Poly Market, with you can like hedge your bets on something. You can like whether this event is going to happen or not. That seems to be somewhat sustainable. That seems to be somewhat interesting. You have things like let's say like Waxed Up Fun as well, Pumped Up Fun. These are kind of sustainable in the sense that, well, you know, you can have people constantly creating these new meme tokens all the time, and always have a wide array of new forms of short-term gratification for people to participate in. But there just needs to be something like, if you could have like a game, right, that's available whenever you go in, you play, you have your gambles, you have your fun and stuff. That seems to be the main thing that's missing. There isn't an activity that provides short-term gratification consistently, and it's actually an enjoyable process, you know.
Yeah. How do
But
we
of
get
course-
the DevOps engineer into building a fun and engaging experience? And
So
how do we get the developers that are able to do that into our RFP system or whatever it is without the need to provide tech ops?
I still don't understand the RFP system, by the way. I have no idea how it works or what it is. I don't understand the concept of it.
It's
just a
unfinished.
repo.
It's unfinished by now, but the idea essentially is that we collectively discuss ideas that should then be proposed to Wax Labs, and we have just that feedback step before that, and it's essentially anyone can suggest changes to any part of Wax, I would say, too. That's
It's
the
like a
place
forum.
where, yeah,
It
somehow.
operates as like a forum. And I don't know, Reagan, like I don't think like there's something that like the OIG or the Wax team could really do to incentivize that outside of like outright onboarding a project like that, or like the developers of a project like that to come and build it. You know, I think that's far beyond the scope of what can be done in your guys' position, especially with the resources that you guys are working with. It's just not even, and it's also like the focus of the of an L1 chain should not be to hedge bets onto a single project. You know, it's not an easy position to be in, but it's something that you know, I think this approach forward is the best, where we're talking about the things that are tangible. And things that are like actionable, that don't require massive amounts of resources or massive amounts of like time investment, right? You want to build something like that I described, that is a machine that provides short-term gratification, fun, and entertainment for people to come and interact with, and it's competitive to like how people spend their time in Web 2 and well, just in the real world. You're looking at 1 to 2 years of full-time development for a whole team, right? That is not something that should be sponsored by Wax. That can't, like, it's just not even within the scope, you know? So
I think it's fatal to think of such an initiative as it needs to be pre-funded and all the funding needs to come from chain. I think that's a fatal mistake we are having when we think about Wax Labs in its current state, and also Wax overall and the activity going on Wax at the moment. I don't think it's right to subsidize the whole project costs and agree on it before the product has been pitched or an MVP is out there or it has been proven that that the community is adopting that game. So I wouldn't think of
I
it
agree,
as,
but it's like I don't think you guys should do that, but it does become like overall, like I don't think Wax should be in a position where they're like looking to outright sponsor development of like an entire thing like that. But also it's like, well, maybe the efforts should be put into figuring out a way to present the Wax platform as being in the best of their interests for whatever projects, whatever companies you want to onboard, and actually making it seem like, well, this is actually a lucrative opportunity. Here are the values that you would gain from doing such a thing, you know? So maybe like kind of like something like a pitch deck for Wax to studios, to like game companies, maybe the game company onboarding process kind of thing, you know? Because like for any business, you have to take that risk of developing it for an extended period of time. There might be a massive payout, there might not be a massive payout. What are the rewards?
I can say,
you know?
I want to say this because I looked at every single proposal on Wax Labs since proposal 60 or whatever it is when I started, every single proposal. And I think if you are not able to pitch your project with a proper presentation or a demo or whatever it is, and write a convincing proposal for a 5-figure sum to fund your project, I don't think you should write the project proposal. Honestly, there should be, as you say, there should be really clear criteria on how it should be presented. But if you're pitching for your project funding and you put it all into 10 sentences and you describe a project which is taking 3 months and over 10K, then that's bad.
That says a lot about the people behind that proposal or the quality of the proposal. So the proposal should be presented like you are pitching to a VC or business angel. You want the money, so you have to sell what you are going to build, and you have to do it right. And most of the proposals are just not professionally presented.
Yeah, I think that's a bit different from, I guess the question that I was trying to answer, right? Because like a 10, let's say even $100,000 grant, like a 3-month project, if it was that easy to add like tremendous value to the Wax ecosystem, it would have already been done. It's evident that the chain requires much bigger ideas, much bigger projects, right? You want to hire a team of, let's say, 5 or 6 like senior developers. You got 2 dedicated smart contract guys. You got who are also very proficient in Antelope. You have maybe 2 dedicated like infra guys. You got one person that's doing like the overall game design. You got maybe 5 to 10 artists that are being like on like a commission. You know, you're constantly going through them. You've got a UI, UX. You got a marketing person. You got someone who's just purely for the marketing and the biz dev. You got some dedicated community managers. You got all of the like the landing page, 3D models. Like, this all of a sudden becomes a 20-person prospect full time. You're looking at probably around $2 to $3 million per year operating costs. That is not something that Wax should be. They're not in the position. They shouldn't even. That expectation isn't on them to sponsor at all. But it's like, that's quite likely what's needed. And it's like, that might be 1 to 2, maybe even 5 years. If we're talking about traditional game development, like for like AA, AAA titles, like that is what you're looking at. And those are the products that are actually competitive with what exists in Web 2. It's just, what reward can be provided to make it so that it makes sense for any company to justify that expense, for any company to spend an estimate, let's say $10 to $15 million over 5 years. And they'd still be a small business relatively, but $10 to $15 million, what rewards would they have? That's kind of like the main, it's like a catch-22, right? The chain is not immensely successful because it doesn't have these kind of products, and these kind of products aren't being built because the chain isn't immensely successful, and by immensely successful, I mean like 10 billion plus market cap, and actually being able to be very sustainable and endure the lows, endure the bears. It's kind of what's needed.
But I think we have seen products with much less effort in production and much more success because at that time, for example, play to earn time in 2021, like it didn't really matter how your game looks like. It was all about the financial incentive. So it's quite
also we're going through COVID and lots of people were just getting free money. Like, that was a very unique point in time, and we can't, 2021 will likely never happen again, where people were getting thousands of dollars and they were able to stay at home.
I don't know if you can only speculate about it, but for sure the GameFi category on CoinGecko has shrunk by 8% during the last year, I saw on Dune Analytics. So GameFi overall was shrinking during last year. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily bet on a single flagship game on Wax being developed through Wax Labs, for example.
I agree. I don't think that it should be, right? But that is quite likely the product that's needed to push the ecosystem that far, you know, or
I'd say
really significantly push it forward.
Whatever number you said previously, somewhere in the million ranges, if you put that amount of money into a working DeFi protocol, I think that's more promising at the moment.
Well, it's
To be
guaranteed.
honest,
If you want to look at it like that, yeah, you could put it into Vanguard ETF and you could double your money in like 8 years. Sure. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities, especially when you have that sort of capital.
no,
There's
not
also the
not necessarily
opportunity
buying something, but just build a native DeFi protocol on Wax, which has incentives, and others can build DeFi products on top of that protocol.
How about this? If you have that kind of capital, why don't you just start your own chain then? Right now, the research that I'm doing, it's like you can spin up your own chain for like $250 a month.
Antelope is expensive.
Is it?
Not to start.
The license cost. Yeah, I don't know.
Antelope
The test
isn't.
cost, you can start for free at least.
Spring, you know, it's like if the market cap's above 750K, I think that was the criterion. But it's like you can get very, very low, very affordable operational costs. And so the thing is, there are a lot of things that people can do when they have that sort of capital, right? And so having an actual feasible product or making it worthwhile, having a genuine reward in that niche, in that category, I think it needs to be done. You know, like it needs to be outlined. I'm not, and it's like, it's not an easy thing. It's not like this is just, oh, well, let's just send someone to go and do it. You know, we'll hire someone on Fiverr to figure this out for us. Like, no, this is a very, very difficult problem to figure out. Because yeah, like, well, what incentive do people have to come and even like, let's say, what incentive would someone have to even launch their project on Solana? You know, if they have that kind of capital, they could just have it on their own chain. Maybe just have a single token deployed on Solana, bridge it over.
Yeah, but then you face the real world issue of 0 customers.
I completely disagree. If
you can grow quickly, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at it. What was it? Off the Grid or something, right? That they had like an Antelope, or not Antelope, an Avalanche sidechain dedicated for just their game. And they built like effectively, I mean, they say it's AAA, but it's like a AA third person battle royale crypto game, right? If the product is good, if the product's actually an enjoyable experience, then people will come and try it out. They will come and play it, and it was free to play. It is free to play. I think it's on Epic, if I'm not mistaken. So like, of course, everything that I'm saying is predicated on the idea that the product is actually good, like objectively good. It's an actually enjoyable experience that's competitive to how users can compete, or like it's like the company can compete in regards to how in regards to the other ways that users can spend their time. You know, like the internet attention market, for example. You know. Because there's lots of ways you can spend your time. It comes down to the company that's making a product to make sure that it's actually worth their time and enjoyable.
I hear you.
I just want to quickly say that I agree that we may need something, but no matter what we need, then primarily we also have to get the community to welcome it or to appreciate it. I think we have a lot of games or economies or whatever on Wax that already work in theory, or that could be fun to play, but if there's no like demand or support or like inflow of people, then they just can't sustain themselves or keep developing. So that's a little bit of the main issue. And this whole chat also reminded me of like another conversation I just had in the Pixel Journey community about who is actually like let's say, I'm not sure if it's the correct term, but the primary user that we want to onboard to the Wax space. Is it these already established games with communities that we want to have integrating Wax somehow into their games, so that those communities might get interested in exploring more of Wax? Or is it small indie developers, artists, creators, whoever's meme creators who wants to come in and make something? Or, I mean, better defining who our exact target audience is would help streamline the whole ecosystem and also achieving that. But if we are split in 100 different directions, then it doesn't matter if we sort of try to succeed in just that, if it's not the right audience to introduce to the ecosystem as well. Or maybe just not the right time.
I mean, all of those communities that you mentioned and all those different types of products are valid prospects. The issue is, and this is not to talk down on anyone's craft, right? But the main issue is that there aren't a lot of things that people can engage in all the time, right? Like just activities that people can participate in whenever they want to. For example, like collecting an artist's art, collecting digital collectibles, that's not something that you can engage in 24/7. That's available whenever people want it. There are very few products that kind of fit that bill. And it's like, well, the only thing, as far as I can tell, that kind of fits that bill is a game or something like Polymarket. Wax.fun does kind of fit that bill as well, but of course, we need a whole lot more users, a whole lot more money moving through it for it to really push forward. And of course, it's always going to pale, and this isn't to talk down on the efforts of the applicant. It's always going to pale compared to the pumped up fun, just because, well, they got way bigger chain, way more users, right?
Also,
Henrik even here, he asked the question and he left.
Yeah,
right.
Battery died or something.
Yeah.
But I just want to quickly share an observation of the market in the past 12 months. And you rarely see projects sustaining a certain market cap longer than a month or two. They often start with a lot of marketing and a lot of people becoming part of that community or project. And then eventually they stabilize at the price. But yeah, it's difficult for small to medium scale projects, especially those meme coins on Solana, to sustain or maintain a certain price or whatever. So you will often find those people launching the next project and the next project and the next project. It's not often that you will see that an existing project will experience a huge increase in liquidity all of a sudden, and everyone will be just happy and the community will grind the rewards out and whatever it is. It's typically that they launch a product, then it eventually dies over the course of a few months, and then they just launch the next project. So I think it's very difficult to make a long existing project appealing again. I mean, tokenomics is also a sensible topic. But yeah, that's what I observe. A lot of blockchains launching the next L1 and the next L2 and the next game and the next product on that chain. And those get typically much more attention than the existing projects. Axies at one point on Ronin chain in 2021, it was the biggest play to earn title, and there were articles about South Koreans paying with that currency when they go to the barber and stuff. And nowadays, nobody is talking about that game anymore.
Which is, by the way, that's almost every game outside of Web3. The expectation that you're going to create a piece of software that people are going to love and interact with forever, like that's and you don't have to constantly innovate and reinvest into it. It's an impossibility. It's simply an impossibility.
So,
You know, and so it's like the idea that like, well, these lots of projects, they keep you know, lots of companies, they keep launching new projects, and their old game, they just kind of coast along. It's like, well, that's because that's the only identified business model, right? It's the most reliable business model that currently exists. The new methodologies haven't been discovered yet, they haven't been proven yet, right? And it's not like because if other business models existed that were a way for a company to sustain itself and continue to grow itself, people would use them. They most certainly would. There's like, because it's like, well, why would you, as a developer, as a creator of something, why would you want to see it, you know, perish and die off? You want it to live forever. You want it to continue to grow. It's just that it's not solved yet, you know. And that's something that's like, that's not just that's like not just like a wax issue. That's like everywhere, you know, for every single project, every single NFT project, every single crypto game.
So I will iterate again over my previous question. Where do you see the very technical guilds play a role in this? We need to fund fun and engaging experiences on Wax, other than providing high quality APIs and a flawless user experience to the user.
I mean, the thing is, when infra works, you actually don't even see it. It's completely invisible to you. It becomes something that's just like a part of the universe, the same way that like light exists. Like you're not thinking about like, you know, the curvature of space time when you're going through your day. It just is.
It's just magic. Right.
Exactly. And that's like, you know, like although it's not particularly savory, like when something is actually working exceptionally well, it's completely forgotten. It's kind of like the paradox of a well-working system, you know. And so ultimately, I like when I see, like, in my opinion, entrepreneurship and building products is like, there's an inherent risk to that, but there's also a massive inherent reward. The payout, the potential payout, is substantially higher than what infra could ever provide. And that's simply the nature of the game, you know. However, for infra, the costs are very consistent. They're very well outlined. The effort that's expected is outlined, you know, and it's a lot more streamlined of a process. So in my personal opinion, the whole evaluation, the whole OIG system, it makes a lot more sense to maybe even keep it exclusive to the provision of infra and finding other ways to incentivize product development. Because again, like, even if you create a product and it's not used, that's arguably worse than an API that's not used, because an API that's not used, you can just shut that down, right? It's no big deal. You can't exactly do that for a crypto game. You can't exactly do that for NFTs that you've like distributed, money that you've taken from people, right? From community members.
So to sum it up, you are in favor of a complete separation of tech ops and contributions points and the allocated funding?
It could be a way to go, right? It could be, but also it's something that, like, you know, ultimately a lot of, you know, we shouldn't look everything through the lens of purely the rubric, you know, and evaluations. The profiting and like guilds should most definitely not rely on any single source of income. You know, guilds should definitely not rely on any chain independent or just a single chain. You know, you got to be diversified, because you just don't know how the future is going to play out. You simply don't. And I say this from like all of the, you know, for example, this is all very reminiscent of, like, let's say you had like the EV calculators or the ROI calculators that you see in crypto games, right? You got this tool that's going to generate this much like Aether or this many like tokens per hour, right? Everyone thinks it's going to last forever. And that's what they buy into. And then they start to build all their plans around it, right? But it doesn't always last forever. And you have to be adaptive. And I think, it's also important to be mindful that when we have so much of a focus being put on the rubric, it basically becomes this thing that's like, well, what if this is just keeping people's minds occupied and keeping them busy and not actually focused on the things that they should be focused on, which is constantly expanding out, constantly, diversifying their operations so that if something happens to one of their products or one of their sources of income, they can keep going, right? Does that make sense?
Are you quoting Michael here? Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it does. All right. So much talk today.
Michael, you asked earlier, I guess it was like 15 minutes ago, how do you go about presenting funding for a for-profit project?
Yeah, it's just been that ongoing. I mean, I know there was talk about Wax funded, pump fund, whatever it was. But it's been this endless, as I have a project that says, hey, Wax is pretty cool, but I mean, it's going to cost something to go over there and other people are willing to pay me to go to their place. What are the opportunities available? It's always been Wax Labs or because Wax Labs isn't for profit still, correct?
So, first step, I would like you to present your idea on the Wax community chat. The second one is that we would want to see a well-researched concept, which doesn't fit your description because you are well known in this ecosystem and you already had previous projects completed. We want a clear understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. Also, when it comes to funding, you should be able to explain how that project plans to maintain their services after completing the grant. Would you need additional funding sources? You should be able to present an existing user acquisition plan. So how do you plan to grow your community, your project? You should be able to prove some experience in the field, in the proposed field, and demonstrate your technical prowess. A comprehensive and well-defined technical proposal highlighting key details and innovations, which would make it more appealing. And then, of course, if there are existing products that you are competing with, you should be able to explain the differences and how you plan to implement novel technologies or innovate the previous product.
So you're supposed to show up to a community call and pitch it to y'all?
That's what happens sometimes on Thursdays. We were missing you there. People show up.
I can't ever make the Thursday call because my dev team that's building the blockchain app literally meets at the exact same time every single week. But that's why I'm just floss. Like, I mean, I have a product of my own. It's got blockchain built into it. But how would it go down that process? I mean, it's like you show up and you just know to present it on the community chat. And everybody on the call either says, hey, that's really cool. You're a cool guy.
Ideally, that happens. Exactly. We want that. We need that. That's what we want to see that your product.
What type of funding packages are available? You see what I mean? These conversations are really, really, really hard when I've got to talk to businesses. It's like they have a massive war chest and will just make it rain. You're right. They suck, but they'll just throw money at you. Why Wax? Well,
you maybe can get something if you put in all this work.
Right. That's what I'm trying to. And what work is it? not Wax Labs. Definitely don't go on that path. Okay, community chat.
A
And
lot
you
of the
present
grant
to-
systems I've seen has these layers or tiers that you're talking about. You're able to get up to this tier and maybe something bigger in case you reach some outside metrics. So you get some clarity. Hey, you can get $1,000, 10,000, 25, 100, $500. I don't know.
This year is not in its final version, but at some point I was also thinking about grant and bounty tiers, and that the reviewing of those tiers happens in another way than today. But essentially, we were looking at smaller community projects, tools, scripts, whatever makes the community members' life easier. And then something like small scale projects, medium, and everything above that is considered a large project, which will need some more guidance and mentoring along the road. So that's where we typically will see a cooperation with the WAX team, hopefully. We were also talking at some points about some kind of community vote threshold. This is heavily debatable, to be honest.
Oh.
But yeah, there are details in here which we need to formalize. But
I can tell you
Those
this,
are-
having been on a lot of chains with a lot of community vote for funding, good
Yeah.
freaking luck. Because everybody
Yeah.
nickels and dimes. Everybody says my brother down in Rwanda can do it for $5 an hour.
yeah,
I mean, no, bro. But
Yeah.
I mean, my point is like, okay, is it a community tool? Because for $1,000, it's not even worth the time for anybody to build a presentation. For $10,000, that barely probably even covers what it would take to integrate any blockchain into an app at the minimal level. So that's why I'm like, it's good to see something, but that's always been kind of the bottleneck I run into as I go to talk to, oh, you're a blockchain engineer. Cool. I got this idea. Yeah, you could do it. But go to Solana, go to Polygon, go to these war chests that have these massive multi-million-dollar slush funds, and they're going to fail 9 times out of 10. But when they get a Pump.fun or a Bored Apes or whatever, that's what it takes. So anyway, that's why I asked that question, and
I
it
don't.
sounds like the answer is present it on the community call and hope that somehow it finds its way to the Wax team and they like it because you're not presenting to them, you're presenting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But just based on the assumption that Wax Labs is going to cover all of the development and marketing costs, for example, I'm skeptical about our
It
ability
won't.
to
That's
do
not the
so.
question, though.
For profit.
It's just a
Yeah.
grant. It doesn't have to cover all of it. You know,
It's-
when
it's
you go
the
to
unclarity
university,
of what you can
don't need
expect
a full
from
ride
it.
scholarship. Yeah, grant
Yeah,
is fine.
I was
Also,
just
also these,
referring to the
I think they're missing a
comment.
0 on each of them. Like,
That's
it's a little-
probably not within our ability, but yeah, it could be that there's a 0 missing on every one of them. But that's probably not the level of funding we're talking about here on Wax Labs, right?
That's the thing.
Today.
We need just clarity. You need to be able to tell a team when you talk to them, hey, there is a possibility to get this. It's not guaranteed. If you present it well, you have a chance to get. You can make an argument for getting this tier or this whatever you're looking at. Then they have an idea. Okay, is it worth for us to put in this detailed plan? Because right now it is create the proposals, suggest how much money you want for it, and let's see what happens. It's good to get some kind of better communication because we need more things built on Wax. We need more clarity. If you go to an event and talk to a team, hey, you should come to Wax. Okay, why should we? Yeah, because Wax chain is great for. Okay, there's a lot of blockchains now that are great at a lot of things that Wax team is good at. Why should they be here? Right now, from my opinion, we don't have any clarity from the Wax team. Which direction is the chain going? If we go back 2 years, it was the king of NFTs. The chain is going. We're gonna be the best in. If you are having an NFT in your product, you should go to Wax. We will have all the tools. We'll have all the interfaces for it. This is the place to come. We will support you all the way. everything is built for it. Right now it's the everything chain. Yeah, sure. Who should come here and do what? Yeah, you can come here, you can go to one of the other 500 chains that can do the similar thing. Not the same, but similar thing. Maybe 10 other chains that can do the same thing. Okay, why should we go here? Okay, what's the key value? Okay, we have a cloud wallet. Yeah, okay. That's one big thing. You have a wallet, but other chains have other solutions that are easy to use as well. But they also have these other things where you can get this funding for your product in these stages if you apply for it. And then, okay, we can go and apply for these 5 places and see what we can get. This clarity is needed whenever you go and speak to someone. We have team members that go to events. They meet big leaders, CTOs, they meet politicians, they meet people with money or people with teams that have that want to do something. The sell of Wax right now is very difficult because we have no clarity what happens in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. What is the Wax team focusing on? Where are they leading us? I tried to get that question asked during the last time, but for some reason that was not done, and my mic didn't work, so I couldn't do it myself. I find this very frustrating because we want to bring more teams here. We want to sell the chain, but we can't.
Imagine, here's where I'm stuck, is that we literally have a president that is saying, if you build a blockchain company in America, you can have free tax money, right? Literally, you can't get Wax in the United States without jumping through 8,000 hoops. Do you know how hard it is to sell it when they come at me and say, I want to build a blockchain company? You're American, let's do it. We got 4 years to get it done. Wax is so far off of their radar because it's inferior in the minds of my market that I'm working with, solely because it's so locked. That's a whole other issue. But you throw enough money at them, obviously they're willing to, whatever, or have, see vision or whatever. But I mean, it's hard. You're number 312 on CMC, not listed on any American exchange, and have very little mechanism for providing funding to come and develop on our awesome ass chain. Anyway, I don't need to kick the dead horse, but that's where that question came from, Kaz, to answer your.
These are some very good points. They absolutely are. And to be fair, I do believe Lucas said that the most likely narrative, just during the call, he said the most likely narrative is going to be gaming for mainstream adoption. And I agree. I think because it's the activity that people can constantly engage in at any time of the day. It's a product that's available whenever. But of course, making a product in that niche is very difficult for it to be competitive. Yes, the chain is being pitched as the everything chain, but I mean, it doesn't really matter what it's pitched at, really, because it's capable. It's smart contract enabled blockchain. You can use it for whatever you want. You can. I don't know if you guys remember the address book example on the EOS docs, right? We could use it as an address book. Let's go back. I think it's what the chain is pitched as, or like the narrative that the Wax team outlines doesn't particularly matter for how businesses should proceed forward. I do believe, however, there needs to be like a short sprint needs to be put into developing a proper pitch, an elevator pitch, so that if I bump into another developer, I can say, well, here's why you should build on Wax. Here's why you should actually even think about incorporating blockchain technology into your product at all. Because that is the first massive hurdle. That's the first thing that they have to kind of be sold on, right? Wax is actually secondary to that, because then they got options and whatnot. But it's like, because right now, especially with the let's say the history, the association with how this technology has been used and the public perception of it, it's not particularly wonderful. It really isn't. Although the technology is brilliant, like for example, a hammer is a very capable and very powerful tool. There's nothing wrong with the tool, right? But if people are using it inappropriately, well, then of course it's going to have some negative press with the hammer, And it's the same thing with like Web3 as a whole. And you could even further apply that to to Wax as well, right? But it's like there needs to be a proper like reward.
I think
like
streamlined
proper-
communication is the most important thing. You need
What,
something
like from the
where
Wax
all
team,
teams
or-
can go together and find the path forward and build products that support that narrative.
It's typically not happening. We try to launch a meme coin initiative on Wax, or only a limited amount of the guild members, for example, are promoting Olaf's product on their Twitter or whatever it is. It may be that you are not into Wax.fun and meme coins overall, right? But we are also missing our chances to cross-pollinate our products and guilds, to be honest.
But there's something unique.
That's a different thing, though.
There is something unique about memes, though. Like, you can't force a meme. You can't guarantee success of a meme, right? Like, that's just not really possible.
You're not pitching a single meme coin, and that's not what I would advocate for here. But the
Well, just in
overall.
general, like it's specifically individual memes, but also in general, you know, it becomes. I mean, it's like a probability thing, right? And of course, like the thing that really drives meme tokens is just, well, people willing to throw money at it, but there isn't, as Michael mentioned, there isn't exactly the best way for people in the United States to bring that money into the chain. So,
or to gain confidence in the chain. I mean, that I don't even have to try to onboard them. It's just pretty quickly, bam, and they go to CMC, and they, like people say, they look at the activity and they're like, well, how do you guys do that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really hard sell. Again, it's a bigger problem to fix, but it started with the path of, I can't even show them where they can go get some cash to cover the dev costs to even do it.
The market has also caught up, though, because when you look at 2021, then a number of chains which had NFT applications or NFTs capable of more of just having an owner in the table, the number of blockchains were very limited. But every other blockchain now has an NFT standard, Solana including, for example, right? So,
I mean, I can tell you this, it's really hard now that someone you all may have heard of launched this big token on Solana. Everybody's like, what's this Solana thing? Right.
Yeah, that's...
These are all very, very isolated and extremely difficult problems to solve. I think that should also just be said, you know, because, like, of course, if one of these was solved, each one of them would become easier.
In my opinion, it rolls into part of the bigger conversation about bringing value to the chain. Now, you talk about you want your guilds to do that and having the funding mechanism to do so, but it's ultimately the same thing. It doesn't, and arguably probably doesn't need to be a guild. It needs to be somebody who had that awesomest ass idea you've ever seen in a garage and is looking to get it built and find the technology to deploy it on. That's the same path of providing funding and incentive to bring value to the chain. So I think they are tied together.
Mm-hmm. So a feedback I'm taking from that conversation is that if we were to propose new guidelines for an RFP system or for Wax Labs, we should accompany those rules by providing more guidance on what we want to be built and what parts of the ecosystem we want to enhance.
That's one thing, but also clarity on what you can expect in sums of funding ranges or whatever.
Yeah,
that is the most important thing in my opinion. That's lacking right now. It's not the only thing. There's a lot of things, but that's one big thing.
I would almost love to, because I can. I mean, I got a project that I could take and run directly through the pipeline and just say, all right, so if it were somebody else with this idea, how would this go through and what process and what information is available, and where it's not, fix it. But take a step outside and walk through the process and identify where it needs to maybe be streamlined or documented.
Yeah. Do those companies that we are speaking of onboarding always expect some kind of funding before they start delivering?
They
So
expect to at
it's a
least have an
different thing.
idea what they could get.
we didn't have so good experience with that one in the past, approving projects and prospect developers for proposals.
You can't be afraid of things. For once, it's a startup, but this is only one thing. The knowing what you get and or expecting to fund everything, that's not really the topic that at least I am touching on at all.
Right.
It's clarity and also the reasons for why Wax over other chains. Before it was clear, the message was clear. Communicate it's about NFTs and you can also do these other things. You can do everything, but we are really good at NFTs. You want the game, we can have all the economic layers of your game on the Wax chain. We have this wallet, easy to integrate. We have SDKs for your game engine and things like that. But
Jaxes,
and all of these things
NFT
still
markets,
exist.
all of that.
But the message is not clear. It's like, okay, what's the roadmap for the Wax team? That's the same roadmap as last year, basically, and the same roadmap as the year before, basically. Does that like build encouragement for someone? Okay, this is where the Wax team believe that this is coming. I think that Lucas made a way better case last week when he was speaking about things. He was pretty clear. However, there were a lot of questions that were not brought up because of some limitations and everything. And having clarity in the funding system makes it easier to approach this. Okay, so you can expect this kind of money if you come and build here, potentially. That adds one of these arguments for why use the Wax blockchain over some other chain. We have this chain infrastructure, very easy to use. We have the wallet infrastructure. We have these tools to integrate with your game or NFTs if that's what you want to do. We have Alcor where you can list your token easily. We have a bunch of tools that are easy to use and build into your ecosystem. Other chains has a lot of these things as well, so we need this clarity. We need this streamlined information and to find that message and to have the leadership of the chain go and say, yeah, currently NFTs are dead, it's not real. Doesn't really matter if currently NFT projects are not as hyped. Having a leader that goes and says, yeah, NFTs are pretty dead right now, and you have had a chain that build NFT products for a few years, not really good for encouragement or to sell the chain.
I mean, I tried to, an hour ago, I think, I tried to describe that looking at those different sectors like meme coins and whatever other narrative currently is hot, and this is AI and memes has been for the past time, you can just see signs of NFT markets shrinking and gamified products too. So that's how I view it too. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't put more effort into innovating our NFT game, but let's say we had an equal strong meme coin game on Wax and the meme community. I think that would be what would drive actually more users at the moment at Chain. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to progress any of those branches, since we are trying to become the everything chain, a super performant L1 with enhanced smart contract capabilities, one of its kind NFT tooling, ease of use, UX, cloud wallet. We got superior tools in many parts of the ecosystem, right? And I wanted to get back to your last comment because, okay, we may be confusing two items on actionable items on the agenda here when we talk about the roadmap, and the other thing is what we what we should be funding and what we should be building next, right? Of course, the one thing is the roadmap, which where I'd like to see a lot of items that progress the technical capabilities of Wax in itself. However, this is probably more interesting for an investor kind of customer or user on Wax, right? And the other part is fun and engaging experiences, low gas cost. So typically gamers that are looking for a fun experience involving a financial aspect too. And then the other part, the pitching of the chain as a whole to people that want to build on Wax. I think here so the previous one is the actionable item. Let's improve the roadmap and think about a further extended roadmap. And I think this one here, the next comment is work out specific marketing material to be able to pitch the chain to builders, right, that want to come to Wax. So this could be as simple as a PowerPoint presentation with 20 pages, pinpoint describing our strengths and why you should come here to build here.
Dude, no, bro, 20 page PowerPoint, bro. This is like I might bump into someone and be like, "Yeah, well, you're a developer, cool. What do you do? Oh yeah, I'm working on like a game dev studio." Like, and then like 45 seconds at best, man. They're gonna think you're insane. PowerPoint presentation, bro. They're gonna look at you like you're a nut. It's not. It's gotta be like
not 20 pages, but 3. But you're talking of some kind of marketing material, something that you're able. Yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to tell people then in 5 seconds? Come to Wax. Wax is faster. Wax is simpler. Wax is cheaper. We have the better NFT standard. We have.
It's easy. You want me to tell you what you should be able to say? We have these tools. These are the products that are currently on the way. The Wax team has this roadmap. This is on the horizon. So if you come here and build, this is what you can expect.
But that's assuming that they're already sold on the idea of Web3 at all. So that's the first thing that's going to be part of the pitch. You know, I know it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we're just competing with other chains. It's like we're competing not just within this ecosystem, but the broader like internet attention market, right? So, and all of the products that exist within it. So like the first part of the pitch has to like address why they should have blockchain technology within their product at all, address how that they're like, how not like, you know, because you can't, there are a lot of downsides to it. And the number one downside is the stigma and the potential stain of reputation. But there's the upsides are maybe there's like a lot of profits. There's a lot of, you know, a little bit of futurism.
How do you go about the downsides? Do you tell them about it, or do you?
I think you don't say it.
Yeah,
I think you don't. I don't think like you like. Let's say like you're like a car salesman. You're not going to say that. Yeah, well, this car, the tires go flat. It'll cost like $1,000 to replace just a single tire. You know, like I just don't think you would mention that, right? That's something that like they would have to do their research, and they would have to, because it's like you're trying to sell something, right? You're not trying to be like, well, hey, don't buy this, dude. It's dangerous. But you know, like you know what I mean? Like it should be actively trying to sell the product.
Plays a role, I think. I mean, but yeah.
I think it would be. I am writing down just like all the topics that we're talking about today, or at least doing my best to, just because we're talking about a lot of different stuff, and I think it would be definitely worthwhile to well, continue building on them, right? And I really do think that coming up with a proper elevator pitch for why people should come to Wax, incorporate blockchain technology at all into their whatever they're building, that would be huge. Because then now because you already have like a community of people, the Wax community. Now they just got a new tool that they can use, you know, a new onboarding strategy, if you will, for significant members, right? Which would be the other projects and companies that might potentially come and build here.
And why are we not working on that pitch deck for Wax?
I don't know. I think it just wasn't really a focus. I've tried to figure out some justification for it, and it's like, well, you know, the chain is like it's basically you don't have to worry about a database management anymore in the sense of like recurring costs for you.
No, I really don't mean like today and now working on that, but that just sounds like a solvable issue that fits a proposal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is. I'd say so. With a little bit of insight from the Wax team as well, and a little bit of polish, you know, try to really put together a nice 30-second, 45-second. You bump into someone, oh, they're into, you know, any kind of work that has to do with digital assets. It's like, well, there should be a way to onboard them. People should be able to get trained to onboard them, and I think that would be a very tremendous thing for Wax.
Yep. I would like to have that. Like, if we could assign someone to work on that and get it funded through Wax Labs, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Can you go to the other page, not the grants tiers, but the one where it was like the prerequisites for a for-profit proposal?
That's not what the title of that was. What more kind of proposal acceptance criteria? It didn't have to do with for-profit yet. The idea of for-profit, it came up lately. Those were just some general rules on proposal acceptance rules. Something we would expect to at least look at a proposal, or at least consider funding a proposal.
Okay, so I will say, alongside this criteria, you should have the need for, well, there should be a 30 to 45-second elevator pitch for what they're proposing, right? If your idea takes 30 minutes in a PowerPoint presentation to communicate, it's like something's gonna, like, you might not be able to pay attention to all of that, you know? Like, that's just, you're asking a lot here. If that's what's required, or if it's just like a giant wall of text, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think adding a, you know, just like a clear business plan. Like, if this is funded, where is, like, how does this actually benefit, like, an add to Wax's market cap? How does this generate revenue for you as a, like, the project creator, or like the company that's operating this? And does this have a future, you know, like, or is this something that's just going to be, well, I guess not that does this have a future, but is this only funded by Wax? You know, is this something that is like just a way to get money purely out of Wax Labs, or is it something that actually is like a bit bigger, you know, and it's actually like maybe a viable product, or a very viable and valuable thing for the ecosystem?
It's going to make it hard to explain contributions to the ecosystem tooling, for example, which will probably never generate revenue and always have only an indirect effect on other initiatives, such as you develop a game engine integration for the new cloud wallet, Godot, or whatever it is. It will probably never generate revenue, but it will enrich the whole ecosystem and enable a lot of products.
Absolutely. And that's something that's so concise that it's like, well, you just explained that entire proposal in one sentence effectively, like unintentionally, you know, like, doesn't even need anything extra, any peripheral ideas to fill it up and to actually make it worthwhile pursuing. That fundamentally, it's very self-evident why something like that would be valuable, you know? And that's, I would say that maybe you could even have like a criterion, just like, well, is this fundamental tooling? Is this documentation, right? Because that also kind of falls in that same category where there isn't an immediate payout for you creating documentation or educational resources. Or is this a product? If it is a product, what's the business model? How does this generate revenue for you so that you can continue operations? How does this add to Wax's market cap?
Yeah, that's essentially what is written in that one sentence. I think.
The thing is, like, a business plan, it isn't just like, well, we're gonna do like an NFT drop and then we're gonna make, like, it's more like there's like an actual flow chart. There's some numbers, right? There's some projections. There's some market research, you know.
I think those will be very hard to judge. I think it's easier to focus on how will this effectively onboard users, such as acquiring users through having them signed up for a wallet, and then you track, for example, a person using 5 or 10 different products on Wax, and you can talk of, yeah, that's a successful onboarding. Or you have a clever mechanic inside your product to make people buy some Wax, and then there are some leftovers or crumbles, and those get spent on the ecosystem and stuff. Or there are endless possibilities, but I think we are mainly focusing on acquiring new users, be it customers or developers or builders.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like dollar value, I think it's quite difficult to estimate. And it's becoming increasingly hard to build a revenue positive business. And what does that even mean, right? Is a meme coin which made me 10x and you minus 90%. Is it a successful product? So you would need to establish exact metrics of what you expect and what you would want to see. And that for me would mainly be with whatever contribution, bring new developers or bring new customers on chain. So business plan, difficult to judge, really. You can't estimate what sales are going to do to your project.
Well, let's take a step back then. Let's focus on the more key variables here, the key desires, right? So users being onboarded is one of those things. Same with like adding value to the chain, measurable by market cap, right? When I'm thinking about users, it's like, well, you don't actually just want users to be onboarded and then that's it. You want users to be onboarded and stay vested, maintain their interest, for them to be onboarded. That means their interest peaked, right? It peaked enough to go to the effort of making a wallet and getting those couple of Wax and actually participating in something. There must have, like, no one's making a wallet for the sake of making a wallet unless they're just testing, It's always alongside a product. So if, like the only metric, like the only variable in this whole equation, or like the focus when it comes to users, it shouldn't only be on just onboarding them. It should be also on maintaining them and preserving their interest, right? And the thing that I see happen in a lot of cases is that, well, if there isn't an imminent 10x that's just around the horizon, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain people's attention. People can only be a community member in so many communities. They simply only have so much time, right? And so, well, if you want to fight for their attention, you got to have a hell of a carrot. You don't have a carrot and all they see is stick, they're not going to stick around, so. And then in terms of like, well, how does this add to the market cap? It's like, this sort of goes, it's kind of like a different can of worms, but just about tokenomics as a whole. Considering how cost effective sidechain deployment can be, and how that's quite likely that we will see more of that in the future once like a more simplified framework exists for setting it all up. The resource model of blockchains operating based off of their token being used as a means of validating or computing transactions, it starts to kind of crumble because you can just simply get way more affordable computation elsewhere. And so the value of not only the WAX token itself, but also the value that WAX is providing as an L1, I think a focus needs to be put on that as well. And just like come up with like a clear, concise plan as to how that's going to be preserved.
Yeah.
Is it time to wrap up?
Is it? I won't put a stop to it until someone demands. Yeah, the RFP overhaul is a complete separate topic. But from today's call, I find that we agree on that needs an overhaul. We are still quite split on how do we differentiate between value and service providers inside our guild roster. That has been an endless debate up until today.
You know, 8 months ago, when I joined for my first meeting, that was actually the topic. That was like one of the questions. That was the main talking point, actually. And to be honest, I think 8 months from now, we're still not going to have an answer to that.
I think it was the topic 3-4 years ago also.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. So maybe we should focus on what is actionable, mitigate the circular discussions as much as possible. Right now, it's like, well, I don't know what incentive there is to the WAX token itself. I think maybe that's something that if that was, that could be expanded upon in a way. Because right now it's behaving just as a means of trading value. And there's constantly more and more of it, you know.
Which is the definition of every token at the moment.
And the, well, real world currencies as well. But the consequence of that is you have this thing where you're able to just constantly, at least like with like staking and whatnot, you're able to just constantly compound and reinvest, and it creates this like skewed distribution. And it's like there just always needs to be buying pressure as well. It can't. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just going on a tangent here now. So.
No, you're right about that one. I mean, look at Ethereum. Almost a year ago, they did an upgrade, London upgrade. They tried to become deflationary. Somewhere in January, they became more inflationary than before. Like the amount of tokens that now exist is higher than what it was before the London upgrade, which wanted to make Ethereum deflationary. So yeah, that's a mechanic. That's a very common mechanic you will find on any chain. Just that it hurts some chains more than others. Solana, for example, they have a higher inflation than WAX, higher than 5%. I don't know if it's actually still higher than 5%, but for them it's not an issue. So yeah, but you need to be. I think we need some kind of reform of the guidelines. I don't know how extensive. But I personally, I heard a lot of good ideas, which I like, and I think it would put more emphasis on the team's strength, which would make us more productive. And I think that's a good first step to get into more building and more products and contributions on chain, which brings activity and marketing possibilities at all. So demanding marketing when you can only market the product so often, but you will eventually need to add new things and news and new exciting things to make people excited. So we need to strengthen our building, and if we can improve it by making some adjustments to the guidelines and to the existing RFP system, that's where we should focus our energy at the moment. At first, and then of course.
Wait. I don't think it can be done just by RFP and guidelines. I think we need like a leap here. We need
talking about what is possible from what we
with the resources we currently have.
No, with the parameters that we currently can adjust or want to adjust. We can suggest better framework for the RFP system, and we can suggest a better framework for the guilds, for the block production roster.
Honestly, I think the number one objective needs to be getting wax to like 20 to 30 cents. Easier said than done, I know, right? That money has to come from somewhere.
Can't impact price, can't really do that. But that would be nice.
I know. Well, we can't directly impact it unless someone's got that dough laying around. But it's like because all of these obstacles become way easier to deal with when wax is actually worth 2 to 3, or not. When wax is worth a substantially more, and it just it's
discussions when wax was valued higher was that it needs to be higher. Yeah, so you know that was the discussions in the communities. Oh, it's nice, it's going up, we need to go higher.
And I know you're not wrong with that one, Kaz, but I think it's realistic if we build those experiences that we will see a positive impact on the wax ecosystem, be it activity, users, price, whatever it is. So I see that as a requirement for being more successful. We need to build more engaging experiences. We have been talking about that for a long time. Now we need to...
So we gotta change our approach, you know what I mean? I think, if I'd really, in a perfect world, I'd really like to see some way that all of the guilds can focus on one single prospect, one single idea, and just knock it out of the park and just have an exceptional product, and everyone will be able to benefit from it. That's that's the dream, right? It's very difficult. That's wax, yeah. Like if there's someone to just coordinate all of our efforts,
More of the guilds help the ecosystem projects we already do have. That's also an opportunity.
Yeah, but the products that we do have are not good enough. They're just simply not good enough. The games are not entertaining enough. No, it's not making it better. It's not. This is like we can't. You can't give a. I'm not even gonna say it, but it's like you can't just like polish a turd. Like you got to have a fundamentally high quality, very very high quality.
You can't make Concord a good game.
There you go. Exactly. With
the same team.
But how do we make the wax ecosystem a better one? That is the main issue.
The funding is also not the biggest problem. Games with $400 million budgets fail and flop when they launch because they are pieces of shit. No one wants to play them. They are really bad games. Money is not the only option, only thing.
exciting new opportunities. That's what people are looking like. When people open Deck Screener and they're looking into meme coins, of course, you will find a few guys that try to do technical analysis on a meme coin that launched a month ago and get into it. But it's not what people are doing on Deck Screener. They're watching the 5 minute launched within 5 minutes tab, and they're trying to get early into a game.
But that demographic isn't the majority. That demographic is a very, very, like, not everyone takes, pre-calculus in high school. A lot of people just don't even take math at all, like after like grade 9, grade 10, a lot of people don't care about finance at all. They don't care about economics. They don't care about numbers, and this is a field that's predominantly like, it's all about the numbers. It's all about the EV and the ROI and the APR and the staking and the yield. So it's like, if the product expects, or like it is solely for that demographic, it's like you're targeting a very small portion of the population. The product, this is a chain that sells entertainment. That's like, we're not like sequencing the human genome on Wax. It's purely entertainment. We're selling like commodities, collectibles, things for people to have fun. Right? So let's make the most fun and engaging thing. Let's collaborative effort. Hear me out. Could be a game. It could be a hell of a game. Find some way so that all of the guilds could work on it. Find some way so that all of the guilds could benefit from it. And also find a way to give a reason for people to hold Wax tokens. If people have no incentive to hold Wax tokens, then it's only going to be used as a means of buying and selling, right? The moment a project launches, they get a whole bunch of Wax from the community, they just sell it right back, The moment the users buy like a bunch of tokens, they're using it just to buy NFTs, the recipient of that Wax goes and sells, oh, I just cashed out, So it's like, there is no fundamental reason for it, like why Wax tokens need to be held. There isn't enough of a use case. And if we continue to tie only system resources to that use case, well, what about sidechains? It's way more affordable, and then that needs to be researched as well. So there needs to be another new use case and reason for people to accumulate Wax tokens, and there needs to be some way for everyone, right? Because to work on some single individual product, a game, something, and find a way to push Wax forward. Because the moment we reach like 20 cents, all of the guilds are chilling. You're gonna have more than enough budget to be able to run as many redundancies. It just doesn't even matter, redundant like APIs. They're gonna have more than enough to hire team members and continue to take the risk of developing product innovation on their own. Everything becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot easier to pitch Wax to new developers. It becomes a lot easier to find it on CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko. It becomes a lot more established. Everything gets better if those two tasks are kind of figured out alongside the rest of them. But
yeah. Wouldn't object to what you just said. I do feel like silently many people on Wax consent to that, to the fact that it would be easier if Wax overall was more appealing.
Doesn't matter, it's not the reality.
Not at the moment, yeah. So within our scope, we can emphasize building. And then this is probably a discussion for when we iterate over the two types of guilds topic again. Based on that assumption that it's most urgent to build fun and engaging experiences, where do we see the very tech-savvy guilds?
Or create a fun environment to build and test things. One doesn't need to exclude other.
Yeah.
When there were new things launching all the time, it was fun to create new things and engage with people and test ideas, and some ideas was better than others, and A lot of them has faded out, but all of them were not bad. That ecosystem is very nice to try to encourage in some way.
That, I'm not gonna lie, today's discussion was exhausting and all over the place again.
Whole lot going on. Okay, I think the one actionable thing that we can definitely take away from it is putting together an RFP for the elevator pitch for Wax, right? Putting together something that's going to streamline the onboarding process for anyone that's in the Wax ecosystem and actually being able to sell and bring new developers, maybe even users. That's a bit different because you need a product to sell to users, but just developers, companies, projects, anyone that has an asset, digital, non-digital, a game, some kind of prospect, and being able to onboard them.
Hit me up if you need an AI-generated mascot.
Perfect, will do.
Henrik, before we close the call.
Yeah, it was on the topic of if Wax was 20 cents, then we would have no problems. And yes, I agree. If we had infinite money and all that, then there would be less problems. But I have often mentioned this as well. I don't think that it is Wax or the value of Wax that will suddenly make things go better. We need to make a reason for that Wax to go up. We need to have those success stories in the ecosystem. We need to have projects with stable liquidity, demands, communities, utility, tokenomics, and all that. But most of all, the volume. And if there's volume, then you can make pretty much anything happen. But if there's no volume, if there's no growth or products to market, if everything is basically doomed unless you become a guild and get extra funding, then I think we have a big problem. And that is a thing I've been trying to get some focus on for, I feel like, a year soon, but I don't know how long, and I don't know how to make it clearer. So that's
I think
my view of it.
While this could be known to many people, it's clearly out of our scope or out of the guild's work scope to directly work or think about volume and market cap. While it plays a huge role, I don't think it's within the framework of what we can do here. First, and the resource we have the most is experience, knowledge, and development power that you can put into a product.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to stop you because I think you misunderstood me. I don't want the OIG or us to suddenly just make the Wax token have a lot more volume. I mean, Wax already has a ton of volume, to be honest. It's like millions of dollars being traded of Wax every day in some exchanges every day. But we need like more ecosystem projects having some volume. Like we somehow need, maybe we could make some incentives on like the Wax OIG or in the Wax Lab or something like that to make some focus towards the things building here, because it's the things building here that will drive the demand and the users in eventually. It's not going to be Wax suddenly going to 20 cents and then suddenly we have 5 new AAA titles starting or beginning to develop on Wax, and it's heyday from there. It's going to be the same issue or the same scenario as we saw in 21 if we continue like this, I fear. So that's just something I wanted to drop in with.
Yeah, and I understand. All I wanted to say, though, is that guilds can contribute a lot of time and development effort. And if you find any of your problems solved by any of that, I think that's a positive match.
Well, the 20 cents is more so like a target. Like that should be the priority in figuring out, well, how do we get there? And it seems like, the most highest probability approach is having a game. And the thing is, with a game, it's like it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of resources to build something that will be able to capture enough of the market to make the chain grow that much.
We do have plenty of games. What we do not have,
but they're
is
not
a
good enough.
We do not have a community interested in seeing them succeed, or helping them develop the things that they're lacking.
You can never blame the customer. You can never blame the customer for not being interested. No, I don't think you can. I think the product's just simply not good enough.
I agree with Cass.
I wasn't into Cox. I never owned a single Cox.
Are you not into Cox?
No, I didn't like that. I didn't like that product.
That statement is very funny if you don't know what you're talking about. You know that, because the word sounds like something very different.
Cog, I don't know how you even pronounce it, but that collection
Cogs with a K.
Yeah, flippable coin. You know what I mean? That type of game. I didn't like that. I never bought into it, even though it was one of the most successful collections on Wax at that time in 2021. And I never bought the Street Fighter NFT or something, but I bought a whole bunch of other NFTs. William Shatner, just because I'm a fan. So yeah, you see where this is going. If you like it, buy it. If you don't, you probably won't. So I wouldn't expect a customer that comes in and who finds 10 products allocate the same amount of money on all 10 products.
No.
I will definitely buy a game, a real-time strategy game. I probably won't buy a EFP collection, for example.
But have you then bought, let's say, Brosaken? That is a strategy game, right? It's a card game.
Yeah, I bought it. I own a few NFTs to a point where I could play with those NFTs, but after a while I lost the interest in the game loop. Just my personal favor. Yeah, I like the game, but after a few rounds I found it has not enough depth for me, so I quit playing it.
And by the way, that right there is a paradox of Web3 gaming. We have so many advocates of simplifying and make it easier and so accessible to the point that like you don't even have to play the game to play the game. Whereas in reality, it's like, well, there isn't enough depth to maintain the interest for a long period of time. The games are simply just not interesting. They're just not good enough, you know? And it's like, well, I'd rather make no money and do an activity that I enjoy doing rather than like rolling around in the mud in some HTML based game, just like a clicker, you know, like it's just not. And like I say that with like having built one, it's like this is not actually that fun. It's not that engaging. The only time it is engaging is if you're actually making like a ridiculous amount of money from it while playing these kind of games. Otherwise, it's simply not that entertaining.
I think that's because the money part has been the differentiator compared to Web2 games.
Absolutely.
And
when you know
that's
every
what's
click
been
makes you
focused
money.
on.
I mean, it's
and if you remove that, if you remove that from the games, they can't compete with any Web2 games.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are people that play
the other way as well,
a lot of different things. Like there are people that enjoy a lot of different things. You can find a community for pretty much anything if you keep adding value and content to it. If you have something that people enjoy.
I must admit, I have bought cosmetic skins, purely cosmetic skins.
Shame.
Just because I like the game.
It's fine, of course. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But that, I mean, you just said yourself, because you liked the game, right? All of that, like so many business models are dependent and they're predicated on the idea that the product is objectively good and enjoyable and engages people for an extended period of time. You wouldn't buy an MTX for a game that you're going to be bored of in a week.
And a lot of the Web3 games expect you to pay $20, $50, $100 just to play the game. And that's way more than most people that play games are willing to pay for a game until they have played it a lot and like it. I put more money than that into Path of Exile 2. I'll enjoy it. I really like it. That's a nice game.
However, there are tricks if that game companies use to, for example, a really successful mobile game would have the possibility for someone to earn the #1 spot on the leaderboard. So you have a certain whale mechanic, right? People can buy the first place in that game and stuff like that. But that plays a huge role in mobile game landscape, though.
Yeah, they pay to win.
And a lot of other psychological aspects. But
and that's why there's no streamers playing them. For the most part.
Oh, they are.
That's why
sponsor streamers playing it.
Of course. Yeah, everyone's a Raid Shadow Legends partner, but it's like there's no one that's actually particularly like no one's making clips of like, wow, look at this amazing play in Raid Shadow Legends.
So they make clips of spending money and being stupid.
If you're lucky. Well, granted, there are like a couple iconic mobile games. But for the most part, they're simply too predatory and exploitive. And I think people are very cautious of that. And well, they just don't want to engage in something like that. And it's simply not for most people, it's simply not engaging enough, like as a product. Yeah, like for example, like Clash of Clans. I know lots of people that played that game for years and years. You know, they didn't really spend a whole lot of money on it, but it was actually like objectively a good game. It was competitive. There was a semblance of like team building in it as well. And so there are the unicorns in mobile gaming, but for the most part, it's pretty bleak. And I'd say that's a big staggering difference between like console gaming and like computer gaming versus mobile gaming. The expectations and the audience are totally different. And
absolutely.
The behaviors are totally different.
That's why the financial aspect here is quite important when it comes to having a successful Web3 game. It isn't possible without the financial aspect.
Definitely. Well, today, hopefully there will come a point in time where, well, any game that has digital assets can just use a blockchain and they can just wrap their assets whatever they want, but we're not there yet, so.
All right. We exaggerated a little bit today. I'm afraid our topics were all over the place, but yeah, we will meet again Thursday for some more marketing and game development related talk, probably. I'm curious if we will see a proposal by one guy that wanted to come on and present this week. We'll see about that. Other than that, yeah, the guidelines will be proposed once we finalize them. Thanks for all the feedback today. Honestly, that helps make a better decision. Even though we disagree on some parts of it, it's quite important that we establish a feedback culture like we have, and we can talk about those things. Yeah, nothing left to say other than thanks for joining, and see you on Thursday. Have a great Tuesday, everyone.
Peace.
Adios.